needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, because the world needs to know.
Greetings. Welcome to Say So, where we talk about it, whatever it is, because what you do not know can hurt you. So let's get to the root. For today's episode, we're going to continue in the same vein as the last two episodes regarding testimony. Yet for today, I am going to provide a creative way of telling your testimony that doesn't necessarily involve you using your voice. And it's called note card testimony. And if you just Google that or actually go on YouTube and type that in, you're going to find lots of examples. Now, what Holy Spirit gave me was a little different from what I saw because I was looking for a way to tell my testimony and creative way. So he basically told me to suggested that I get a go to the Dollar Tree and get a photo album, right? Which is what I did. I actually got two photo albums because I needed two of them. It was pretty extensive. So I glued them together or what have you. And then that's how I did it. And the reason I did it that way was because I didn't want to get in front of the camera with the note cards and then like they fall or get out of line or I lose my place or what have you. So I thought, and then there were pictures and other things because I wanted to incorporate my first book entitled Cast Down But Not Destroyed, Destiny's Child, which is my story, my personal testimony and story of survival. It's the of that actually. So Cast Down But Not Destroyed, Destiny's Child is one of three, a trilogy. And I'm working on the second book and I already have the name and everything for the third book, but those are works in progress. So I wanted to go ahead and share my personal testimony and story of survival via my own individual note card testimony. So for this, you don't, like I said, you don't have to talk, or usually most of them, they just show the cards and flip them or what have you, flip through the cards and that's about it. So what will be different here is that after I flip through them, allow you to read each card in each segment. Then I'll go back through and just talk about where I was or give you a little more detail or background. If time allows, I typically have a show around 30 minutes or so, 45, maybe a little more depending on the content, but that's my goal. And then we'll pretty much end it or what have you. So I'm going to go ahead and get started without further ado. So now, as I said prior, mine is a little different because I wanted to find a creative way not only to tell my testimony and story of survival, but also to promote, market, and or advertise my book and the upcoming books. So I just wanted to give that creative way. Like I said, if you go on YouTube, there are hundreds of them. So powerful and impactful. And the main thing that makes it so powerful is the fact that you have to read. So that really pulls you in, and it really highlights different parts of the individual story that you can't tell they experience simply by looking at them on the outside. And I do apologize. I didn't necessarily have the blessed quietness that I wanted, because I'm sure you heard my son in the background. And with the turning of the pages, you know, the plastic or what have you makes noise. But the point and the purpose is to pull the reader in. It's the same as if you're reading a hard copy of a book. You know, it pulls you in with the story, and each chapter, you know, should just kind of crescendo or build upon one another, etc. So I just wanted to do that as it pertains to sharing your personal testimony and story of survival. And I also wanted to just put in a shameless plug. If you are interested in investing in your very own copy of Cast Down But Not Destroyed, Destiny's Child, this is a hard copy. If you live in the Winston-Salem or the Triad area, I can and will come to you for the very low price of only $20. And as you saw, a lot of the illustrations, all of the illustrations are colored. Within these pages, you have 3 poems, one original from when I wrote it in August of 1998 regarding the low self-esteem and the self-worth issues that that you saw in the note card book, as well as original poem from my Aunt Tracy entitled I'm Here, which talks about my birth, and also the another poem about being the chosen vessel. So if you look at this is a vessel in which the child is in, and a vessel is simply a container, you know. And as you saw in the one that says it's well worth it to see what's on the other side of the pain and everything that you have experienced. And it had the before and the after of that same cracked vessel of me as a little girl, yet it had the end result of when God mends you and makes you whole. And that was just the before and the after. So I thought that it was good and it was important to highlight that piece as well. So let's see. I said that I would go through basically the thing, and we have what, maybe 10 minutes or less. So basically, this is my story, my personal testimony and story of survival. Now, with chapter 1, the making of the vessel, just talks about my birth and how I got here. And as it talked about that I wasn't born in the hospital bed in the sterile confounds of a hospital like most people. Yet you'll have to read the book to know exactly where, when, and how that transpired. And the first chapter is entitled I'm Here. The second chapter is entitled Mama, Daddy, Where Are You? And it talks about the breakup of the breakup of my family structure regarding the relationship of my mother and father. Then we go into the breaking of a vessel, and that was a part of my breaking process. Just relationships that did not endure, that did not last, etc. When I was 19 years old in college, and I've spoken about this previously, I wrote a letter to my dad because I saw a relationship between a father and daughter in college where he would come down and take her shopping, and they would go out to eat, and just, you know, treating her like a princess that she is or what have you. And that got me to thinking about the relationship or the absence thereof that I had with my father at the time, that I wanted to, of course, bridge that gap and for it not to be as distant. As a single mother, sometimes we don't understand a person's plight until we find ourselves in their shoes. So I wrote a letter to my mother as a single mother, just detailing that. The main thing that I want you to note and to note of all of this is that hurt people hurt people. within the pages of the book, it asks questions about why did this person just stand idly by and allow this to happen, or why nobody intervened, or why nobody helped, and things of that nature. And the answer to that is that hurt people hurt people. There are trauma bonds that cause you to bond and attach to someone that's either more traumatized than you, or had gone through more stuff and more drama and trauma, or someone that's less or equivalent in your trauma level. So the was self-explanatory. The seeds that were sown into the soil of my soul, which were abandonment, confusion, and rejection. And the seeds growing into roots of anger, bitterness, and unforgiveness. And these are things that God had to help me going through the healing process to uproot and get to the root of them. Where did they start? Why are they there? And how long have they been there? You know, chapter 3 talks about treasure hunt. I'm hungry. And this talks about when I was left alone to kind of fend for myself and find something to eat. And then it talked about one of the placements that we were in, and the leaves of fear and poverty and intimidation grew on the tree, or the developing bush, what have you. And that was linked to one place where we were kept, and there was just physical abuse. So chapter 4 talks about the same thing pretty much. It's entitled She Hit Me. And this is the same placement that ends up chapter 3, as well as begins with chapter 4, and talks about, you know, how I was disciplined, or actually abused, physically abused with an object. And it talks about and names that object. I thought it's important to point out that there is also secondary trauma. So as a child or as an individual, you can see something and it traumatizes you. You can see a car accident and then see someone lose their lives, or someone's limb is stuck, or something, a lot of blood or what have you. And that can traumatize you. When you get behind the wheel of a car the next time, it may not feel the same way that it did prior to you seeing what can happen to an individual in a car accident, and kind of the dangers that can happen on the road. So the leaves of physical abuse, neglect, and ignorance were added to the developing tree, the developing child, honestly. Chapter 5, Where Are My Clothes? This talks about an experience with sexual abuse, and those leaves are also added to the tree. Sexual abuse, molestation, and dysfunction. Just things being out of order, being placed or living with someone who's not biologically attached to you in any way, who's not your family, and things of that nature. So that's just dysfunction, because typically you grow up with your father and mother, or your father if it's a single parent, or your mother, or some people grow up with their grandparents or their aunts or their uncles, or someone in their family that's blood relation. But this talked about my experience being under the care of someone whom I was not blood related to. Chapter 6, and we're almost done. There are only 8 chapters total. So are we there yet? And it just talked about when we left the placement in which we went under Child Protective Services as a result. And, you know, Child Protective Services, there has to be neglect substantiated, which I talked about in chapter, I believe it was chapter 3, that talks about treasure hunt, I'm hungry, with a child being neglected and their needs being neglected, being left alone to figure out, what am I going to eat? What am I going to drink? What am I going to do here by myself? And chapter 4 and 5, physical abuse. She hit me. You know, physical abuse being substantiated, which means there are marks. It's obvious that something has happened to this child, because of marks on their body, or maybe their reaction when someone raises their voice or approaches them. They may flinch or something like that. That could be an indication that they're used to having to protect or guard themselves because of physical abuse. Chapter 5, Where Are My Clothes? Sexual abuse. That's also something that, that happens or may happen, that will help you to find yourself under Child Protective Services, where they used to come in and remove the children from the abusive situation, from the neglect situation where they're being maltreated or their needs are going unmet consistently. So that's what Child Protective Services is and does, or used to. It's a little different now. So basically, I thought it important to highlight the journey with low self-esteem, isolation, on and things of that nature, because when you don't feel good about yourself, you attract friends and people and relationships that don't treat you very well, because you teach individuals how to treat you. Yet when those who were there from the beginning are no longer there, the people that you ascribe to love, nurturing, caring, taking care of, and things of that nature, when that is not your reality, then you do suffer with low self-esteem, because self-esteem can kind of be taught to you by the way you're treated as a child, if your needs are going met or unmet. That fills or depletes your self-esteem bank, so to speak. Now we get to the mending of a vessel. And if you notice on the picture, it is shiny. It's not the broken vessel where there's broken glass, and it's not the breaking, or the making of a vessel where it almost looks like clay. It almost looks like a work that's not completely finished, something that is beginning, or the initial stages of something. So with the mending of a vessel, we're almost home. And in chapter 7, we ask, where is home? And in this, I just talked about all the different places where we stayed, and where can I find a place where I feel home, feel like it is home, and I feel at home. And we talked about that. Within that is 2 letters to my adoptive or God-given mother and my God-given father, those who adopted me, and just giving them thanks for doing for me what I could not do as a child at an early age, what I could not do for myself. So then we move to chapter 8. You were there all the time. And this just talks about that regardless of, no matter how we feel our life may have been just a hot, steamy, stinking mess, that God can and he does use everything. Because without the experiences with abuse, without the experiences with neglect, without grappling with anger and unforgiveness and ignorance and abuse and dysfunction and all of those things that you saw on the tree, which was me. That was a depiction of me as a child. You know, when we look at children, we don't necessarily know what they've experienced, what they've seen, what they've heard, and what their concept of that, because as a child, your development is not complete. So you may arrive to the example or the explanation that it's my fault that this person touched me. It's my fault that I was beaten. I'm wrong. I'm bad. I didn't do this right. I was too slow. I didn't do it fast enough. I didn't do it well, or what have you. And a lot of children do seem to fault themselves and blame themselves, which is a lie from the pits of hell, because it's not the child's fault. They are the minor, especially when things are done to them by older children or older teens or older individuals, older adults. Then it's the responsibility of the older person that should be most mature and more developed. So we went ahead and we talked about, or bridged the gap between the 2 vessels. And this is what I was alluding to, the 2 examples, the before and the after. Bridging the gap between the 2 vessels, going from broken to mended. Once you get to a place where you are healed and you are now intact and whole, as this vessel depicts, then you can pour into others. If you see here, there's a smaller vessel that it's pouring into. Yet, consider this broken vessel. It won't be able to pour because there are too many leaks and too many chips and too many things missing. It's too weak to pour into others. So that was just a visual example. And of course, the rest of it gave correspondence where you could send information to, and a little bit about the upcoming book and things of that nature. But that is just, and I just, the second book is entitled Troubled Yet Not Distressed. And that's going to deal with the initial book, Cast Down But Not Destroyed, Destiny's Child, deals with your mind. It talks about the flashbacks. It talks about the thought processes that I had, that I grew up with. There were lies that were not true about myself, the poverty mindset and things of that nature that came out of my upbringing, or the beginning phases of my upbringing. And in development, those are the most important and impactful and influential times in a child's life, from birth, and I would even say conception. From conception to age 5, that's when you're developing a sense of self. You're learning how to share. You're learning whether or not I can trust people, or is this world safe? Am I loved? Am I taken care of or not? Or neglected, whatever, what have you. So it also segues into Troubled Yet Not Distressed. And this is going to deal with the heart. And this deals with ruptured relationships. This deals with, it shall deal with how the things and the people and the situations and circumstances that can actually break an individual's heart. It deals about being a single parent. It deals with domestic violence. Like I said, it deals with ruptured relationships. It deals with church hurt. It deals with all of those things that you can't just look at a person from the outside and tell what's going on. That's why the word of God says that man looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. You know, sometimes we become accustomed, and even the poem within the book talks about the mask. Sometimes as men, women, boys, girls, we learn how to put on a mask that everything looks good on the outside. Everything is correlated. Everything is matching. Everything looks perfect. Everything looks in place, prompt and poised. Yet on the inside, we're a hot, steamy, smelly mess. And that's why God looks at the heart, because he can tell what's broken. He can tell when it's bruised, when it's cracked. He can tell when it's weak. He can tell when it's almost about to fail and things of that nature. So, I just wanted to share that, but that's just a creative way to share your testimony and your personal testimony and story of survival. So that's all that I have. I hope and pray that you enjoyed this episode as I did. The previous episode, when I was talking about it's the testimony for me, it came while I was recording. It came to mind. I said, oh, well, I could, Holy Spirit dropped in my spirit that, hey, you could utilize that. And on the upcoming episode, I'm actually going to dig a little deeper into the new and upcoming book. So this has even pumped and primed and gotten me excited about go ahead and finishing the book that is to come. Troubled yet not distressed. I began writing it, and I'm going to probably do more note cards. I'm not sure if I'll do the actual index cards, the smaller ones, or if I'll get another photo album and do this. Yet I don't have the illustrations yet. So it's still a work in progress. It's still incubating. Yet I do. Next week, we're going to give you what I have so far as the Lord continues to download for me to be able to write and to be able to get this up and out in a therapeutic and a healthy way. Scribing or what have you, or transcribing. So that's pretty much what I have. But I want you to remember that God and only God has the final say so about where you are now, where you have been, and where you are going. You are simply in the process of becoming who and what God created, ordained, purposed, designed, and destined you to be for his glory. Until next time, miracles and blessings today and every day.